Hey everyone, welcome to the Angst podcast. My name's Jericho, and for this episode, I want to talk to you guys about virtual reality. If you're not familiar with the idea behind simulation theory, this is a concept that right now the universe that you and I reside in is artificial. It's bullshit. A common way of looking at this theory is that somewhere else is the real you in a real universe, and you're strapped into some type of computer simulation, or matrix, if you will. I think this is the common way of viewing simulation theory, is that it's computer code, it's some type of generated image or some type of graphical interface that you're interacting with. I like to kind of maybe pull out a secondary approach and say maybe in the real universe you've just consumed some psychedelic drugs and you're tripping balls. Maybe what feels like 80 human years is actually only 5 minutes in the real world, and soon you're going to wake up and be able to laugh and reminisce about how just fucking crazy, intense, and real the last few moments felt. If you're not into using drugs, then we could spin it a third way, and we could say maybe in the real universe, your body has been involved in some type of accident, and maybe this is a coma, and your subconscious is just creating all of the people and geographies and circumstances you've ever met and interacted with. And that doesn't even seem that unrealistic. We have dreams, right? Every night you can go to sleep and your subconscious can create a realistic seeming world that you can play in. Why can't this be another example of that? I mean, we don't know. That's what's kind of interesting about simulation theories. It's not necessarily provable at this point, but it's not disprovable either. One of the reasons this theory has gained a little bit of momentum in the last couple of years is it's starting to seem more and more possible. If you're watching me here on YouTube at the moment, you're actually watching me interact with a simulated world right now. This is a video game called Overwatch. As we progress as the human species and our technologies get better and better, we're starting to create more and more realistic environments. Games are looking really, really good nowadays. CGI graphics are off the charts. The sounds that are used in some movies and some video games are incredible. They sound like you're actually in the action. And because of that, it doesn't seem unrealistic that we're not going to keep progressing to a point where we could create an entire world that's very realistic seeming, especially if we could find a way to add those other third senses. If we could get the sensation of taste, sound, and touch into these games, how would you be able to distinguish? I mean, given the rate and the path that humans seem to be on, maybe that's something we're going to achieve. And if that's possible going forward, who's to say it hasn't already happened? Given the size of the universe and the amount of time that's already occurred before Homo sapiens have reached now, I mean, it seems realistic that something else may have already accomplished this task. And if that's the case, maybe this is the simulation that they accomplished and we're all just playing inside of it. Who knows? I mean, this is kind of what's fun about this theory. This is what gets my own brain turning. But what I kind of wanted to point to is what I think is going to drive this industry in the next couple of years and decades, and what's going to popularize it. This may not come as a surprise to anybody, but when the internet first started, one of the most popular uses that it had was pornography. Still, to this day, porn sites are some of the most highly trafficked and highly advertised sites that are available. But the reason I think that this all came about was because in the past, if you wanted to enjoy a pornographic video or jack off to a pornographic photo, then you would have had to go out of your way and into public to do such a task. You'd have to go to a store to purchase a magazine. You'd have to go to a movie rental store and go into some back room and then have some punk kid check out whatever weird porn fetish you were going to jack off to later that night. That's not necessarily comfortable, and I think people search for more anonymity. They would like to be more anonymous, is what I'd like to say here. And because of that, the internet gave them that opportunity. They could sit in the privacy of their own home and download pornographic images right to their computer screens. And that was huge, and that opened up a massive market and consumer demand for those services. I think virtual reality is going to have that same demand. I think if you could create an immersive 3D environment where you actually feel like you are having a sexual experience with a real person, that's going to have massive consumer demand. I don't know if everybody always likes to admit this, but I'm fairly convinced everybody watches porn. Maybe not all the time, but at least from time to time, you sit down and watch it. Especially men, it's all of you. It's all of you guys. Women, I'm not going to speak for yourselves, but I know it's all men. And because of that, why would you not want to step the game up? When the technology becomes available in this virtual reality, which it already is, but as it becomes better, I think this is going to drive this industry. I think it's going to put a lot of money into that industry, and it's going to create a demand for higher quality content and better immersive experiences. I think another industry that's going to kind of help this, well, maybe not just one, but the opportunity to practice certain tasks in this world without consequence. Think of the military repercussions of having a virtual reality. You could actually send people into simulated circumstances where they didn't have to die. They could play out scenarios and actually act accordingly just like they were in real life combat, but they wouldn't have to pay the price. And that would give them massive benefits to have that training and that psychological conditioning. We could spin this a more pleasant way, and we could say, maybe I want to be a professional snowboarder. And instead of me spending days and weeks on end fucking falling and bailing off of half pipes and jumps, maybe I could just fuck around in an artificial world, and I could get a lot better without having to break bones and potentially risk ligaments and damage to my body, and I could just practice it. And that would be huge, and I think there'd be a massive demand for such things because it would come up in fields all over the world. And I don't think these are going to be free services. I think these are going to cost you. I think if you want to watch a porn in virtual reality, there's a certain amount of production value and effort that goes into such a thing. And I think it's going to cost a little bit of money. I think if you want to, interact with a virtual reality where you're a samurai and you can fight off people and be a soldier and practice your knife skills, your sword skills, I think it's going to cost you. I don't know if this is in this form of a game and an individual purchase one at a time. That seems to be typically how we've done it in the past. But what if there was a universe that was created that had it all? What if they created an artificial universe that you just jumped into the game? It was one game. We'll call it Grand Theft Auto because that's kind of the closest thing we have in our lifetimes. And inside this Grand Theft Auto virtual reality universe, you could just interact with it like it was the real world. And you could pay for those services. So you could put yourself at the ski hill in Grand Theft Auto. And then you could pay a couple bucks to ride down the ski hill. So instead of inserting a new disc for the snowboard game or the ski game, it's the same game. It's the secondary life. It's Earth 2, whatever you want to call it. And you just interact with those services inside the game because that one game has everything you'd ever need. You could skydive. You could go to the strip club. You could eat delicious food. You could practice, you could learn an instrument. You could do anything. You could spend time just in the game like it was the real world. I think what's kind of crazy about this thought is that there would need to be some type of currency in there. And in the last few years, cryptocurrencies have emerged, which are these electronic currencies and these digital currencies that are nothing more than bits of code and computer data, just like this simulated world would be. And I think it would make sense that as opposed to having a virtual world exist and a real world exist and have to spend real world money in the virtual world, that maybe we could implement a system where virtual currency gets used for the virtual reality and real currency or federal currency gets used in the real reality. And again, I know I'm going off. Some people have definitely lost me by this point, but I'm talking for fun. Like, what if we did create a matrix and we got put into it and there was a demand for services? Maybe I did want to have sex with a virtual prostitute, let's say. Would you pay for that with $5 American or $50 American or $1,000 American? Or would you pay with it in fractions of Bitcoin? I mean, what makes more sense for the virtual world? And what's going to be crazy about it is in the virtual world, you're probably going to be anybody you want to be. You're not going to be limited to age or gender or appearance or whatever may have limited you in our real reality. You could probably custom make and build your own person or character. So I want to point out an example that may play out in the future. And I think about this myself because if I want to have kids one day, let's say my children are growing up when this matrix type system in virtual reality has been perfected. It basically feels real and people do spend a lot of time in the secondary life. What if my kid, let's say I have a 14-year-old son, and let's say that he's not doing very well in school. And the reason that I think he's not doing very well in school is because he's spending too much time in Earth 2. He's spending too much time playing Grand Theft Auto and not studying and paying attention and living his real life. So I say, Kate, no more VR. We're cutting back. You need to focus. But then he shows me his character in the VR world. And I realize that he's posing as some 30-year-old whatever that started a business and is selling and moving money in this game and making tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in this virtual reality, because he wasn't limited to the fact that he's a junior high school student or a middle school student that's still supposed to be going to gym class and, hanging with friends and just passing school. He's taken an entrepreneur. I'm assuming my kid's a super genius. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit arrogant about this, but I'm assuming that he has found some way of achieving success in the game or the system. And who am I as a dad to say now, hey, you should stop playing this game when he's bringing in currency full time, if he's bringing in Bitcoin full time in a virtual world? If that's the case, what if your kid's made $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 and he's 13 years old because he's found a way to cheat the system in this virtual world or found a way to sell a product in this virtual reality? How are you going to treat that as a parent? Is that good? Should that be praised? Is that something to be rewarded? I mean, that's a great spirit to have. Those are great skills to already be demonstrating at such a young age. But that's not real. That's not the real world. And those aren't real accomplishments necessarily. But I mean, how long does it take, and how many people need to be using this currency and this technology and interacting with it all the time till it's kind of a problem, till it's kind of as important as the real world? The thing about video games right now is video games are bullshit. They're entertainment value. You don't gain, I'm never going to argue that you gain a lot more than just a fun little bit of an experience. But VR might not be like that. If VR gets better and better and better and you can actually live a secondary life in that reality, it's going to be really tough, I think, for a lot of people to determine which world they like better. And what if you're more successful in the virtual world than you are in the real reality? I think that's going to be a tough call for a lot of people. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this one. This is kind of a crazy theory for me and just a weird way that I've been looking at virtual worlds for the last little while. If you guys agree or thought any of these concepts were kind of interesting, please leave a comment. If you thought I was out to lunch and that's definitely not how VR is going to go, also leave a comment because I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.